What's happening, you guys? Thank you for tuning in. All right, it's at a point in the season where I think we could use a little bit of positive encouragement because, we know where the Canadians are at in their rebuild, right? And this is always a fun video to have because it's a top five. It was very hard to come up with this list in a sense because I would have much rather done a top 10. But I figured, you know what? Only so many of our prospects are actually going to be able to make a legitimate impact in the NHL long term with the Montreal Canadiens. So let's just try and narrow it down to five. So that's what I've done here. And I can't wait for the disagreements. I can't wait for you to tell me how off my rocker I am for some of these, maybe. Or maybe I'm close. You know what I mean? I think some of you will agree with some of them. But the point is, let's dig into this and actually look at where these five current Montreal Canadiens prospects are currently having an impact on their teams right now, and also how much of an impact mainly they'll have long term with the Montreal Canadiens in the future. Now, what happens with videos like these, there tends to be a little bit more interest, especially when the content is dry on the watching Montreal Canadiens side of things, when the team isn't that great and exciting right now, right? So that being said, if you are here and you're normally not here as often, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe necessarily right now, but I am welcoming your feedback as to, this list. And I would love if you subscribed. I'm trying to get to 5K subscribers. So I just contradicted myself, but let's just get to the top five and have some fun. This is fun. This is supposed to be fun. We need to try and have some fun, especially in a season where it hasn't been that fun so far. That's why we love hockey. It's the best game in the world. It's fun. Let's do this. Coming in at number five, we have Joshua Waugh. Now, it was, and it is going to be debatable where you see him in this top five right now if you want to do a top five like I'm doing right now. But Joshua Waugh currently with the Laval Rocket this season in 18 games played, 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 points in those 18 games. So he's a point per game player right now. He is a -9 at the moment and has 4 penalty minutes on the season. This is Joshua Waugh's first year of professional hockey, finally coming out of the QMJHL with the Sherbrooke Phoenix and also the St. John Sea Dogs, frankly. And, this guy, you can take opinions from wherever you want. And I do respect Craig Button's opinion sometimes. And he said recently on Tony Marinaro's podcast that, he expects Joshua Waugh to be an impact player for the Montreal Canadiens. And I think a lot of us do. A lot of us were really excited about the hot start that he had coming right out of the gate with Laval this season, despite Laval's struggles. Waugh had himself a heck of a game early in the season where he got, 5 goals and 5 points, actually, I think it was. So to look really into it, let's look at the fact that Joshua Waugh has been debated in terms of, a guy that comes from Quebec and what impact he could have long term. He had inflated numbers, if you will, in the QMJHL where other players can tend to have happen, and then it doesn't translate to the NHL. However, Waugh's got some size, right? He's got some size and some strength, and you're going to need that if you're going to be a forward in the NHL, future long-term forward in the NHL, right? So Waugh comes in at 6 foot, 193 pounds right now. He's not a guy who plays small, right? And we saw his impact on the World Junior Tournament last year with Team Canada, having a big impact ultimately on the gold medal that Team Canada won, right? So right now I've got Josh listed at number 5. I expect him to go up this list and to just prove more why he's going to be a bigger long-term impact player for the Montreal Canadiens, and we'll see that in the next couple years when he starts to get some games, some reps in at the NHL level. But there's no rush at this point to bring him to the Montreal Canadiens, maybe not until later this season when the season might be lost, most likely going to be lost. So that's why I've got Waugh at number 5 right now, because I still think he's got some stuff to prove, not just at the pro level in the AHL, but at the pro level in general. So let's see some more consistency out of him and see where he ends up. Number 4, I've got Jacob Fowler. Now, Jacob Fowler has been drawing quite the attention and quite the buzz lately because of the current hot season, the hot start he's having at Boston College. So right now his numbers are very, very good. So we've got Jacob Fowler in 14 games played, and to be specific, 850 minutes. He's got 28 goals against. He's got 1 shutout, a goals against average of 1.98. And his win-loss record is pretty impressive. So he's got an 11-2-1 record, 11 wins, 2 losses, and 1 tie. And his save percentage is a good .931 right now. So certainly having himself a good start in his first year, knowing he's a Montreal Canadian draft pick and prospect, a guy that is hungry to prove that he can be a legitimate starting goaltender eventually in the NHL someday, specifically with the Montreal Canadiens. As he mentioned in his interview right after being drafted, he wants to help the Canadiens win Stanley Cups. That's the right thing to say. Every player should say that. I mean, why wouldn't they? That's the goal. That's the goal of every player that turns professional, especially in the NHL specifically. So you say the right things, but Jacob Fowler seems to not just be the kind of guy who talks his talk. He really walks his walk. And, you know, he went undrafted last year in the CHL and other leagues and was disappointed, and really that gutted him, really, and just really seemed to ignite a fire inside of him that from that point on, he would not be denied. And you saw the fist pounding that went on at the Canadiens draft table, and you saw a couple of guys specifically fighting for the Canadiens to select Jacob Fowler for good reason, because at every level he has played at, he has been a winner. So in terms of the personality, I mean, I told you guys I loved his interview at the draft, but in terms of just how he carried himself, his confidence without arrogance, and the numbers he's showing right out of the gate in Boston College has to be an encouraging sign. And you know something, I can't wait to see more of him play. We got to see a little bit of him at rookie development camp right after the draft, but I really can't wait to see what he becomes, because again, right now he's 19 years old. He just turned 19 a couple of days ago on November 24th. So I think that for me, he could be the starting goaltender of the future for the Montreal Canadiens. I think Pierre Maguire mentioned it on Tony's podcast as well. Jacob Fowler has been impressive. He's 6'1", 212 pounds already. He's a big kid, and somebody that just has that desire, that I will not be denied mentality that I think I feed off of and I read off of him. And I think that that's why I think he will absolutely be a top 5 impact player in this list right here, right now, in the future, more so. At number 5, I think Jacob Fowler probably will have a bigger impact even than this player, and potentially Joshua Waugh will. But I'm a big fan, and maybe that's why my bias is getting in the way here. But this guy's having himself a heck of a season in the OHL also, and that's Philip Masar, 26th overall pick of the 2022 NHL draft. Current Kitchener Ranger Philip Masar. He is having himself a heck of a season with the Kitchener Rangers. And it's funny because I went to watch Phil play live last year here in Niagara, and immediately one of the first things I thought throughout the game was that he needs another year in junior. I think he could use another year. He started this season with the Laval Rocket. Currently, clearly it didn't work out. He had about 1 assist in a few games, what have you. And then he got sent back down to Kitchener, where he's thriving currently with the Kitchener Rangers. 14 games played, 10 goals, 15 assists, 25 points in those 14 games, averaging over 1.5 points, almost 2 points a game right now. Very impressive numbers for Philip Masar. He was compared to Thomas Plekanec right after the draft in terms of the impact he might be able to have with the Montreal Canadiens. If he comes anywhere close to having the impact that Plecky has, we could have ourselves a heck of a play on our hands. I know, based on viewer comments, every time we talk about Masar, that he still hasn't proven himself nearly enough to convince some of the fan base. So maybe that's you guys out there. That's fine. I just happen to be a very big Philip Masar fan, and I got big expectations for him. And right now he's proving it in the OHL with the Kitchener Rangers. It's a development league. It's not as hard of a league as the AHL or the NHL. I get all that. But let's talk about Phil. So he's 5'10", 170 or 168 pounds listed currently, a right-handed shooter, a winger, a guy that can make plays and can finish, and he's got great edge work on his skates. He's a great skater, a great shooter, a great passer, has defensive awareness. He is used in the penalty kill also, so he's got a lot to his game that you would like, and I think that if he has the impact that even his buddy Slav thinks he has, Slav thinks his buddy Philip Masar is very underrated, and I think he is too. I know he's got lots of time too. Phil is 19 years old. He'll be 20 in January. I expect him to have a great World Junior tournament with Team Slovakia. He had a great game against Team Canada last year and actually made them a little nervous, and got himself a goal late in the game last year's tournament to really give Slovakia a chance to upset Team Canada in the quarterfinals. So that being said, I expect an even greater tournament for Philip Masar this year with Slovakia at the World Juniors, and I just expect Masar to keep getting better and better. Sort of like the development path with Juraj Slafkovsky right now. I think better and better he's going to get. And I love his playmaking ability. I love the fact that he can shoot the puck. He has a bit of a deceptive shot also, as we've seen. It's hard to predict what he's going to do with it, but just a very smart player, has great vision out there. Like I mentioned, the skating, the passing, the shooting, the playmaking ability, the power play ability, the penalty kill ability, There's a lot to like there. I expect him to be a big impact player eventually long-term with the Habs. That's why I've got him at number 3. Number 2, I've got David Reinbacher, who has been having an injury-riddled season, as we know, and therefore David's only played in 9 games so far this season with Cloton HC in the Swiss League, and 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points in those 9 games, 4 penalty minutes, and -1. I didn't go through every single statistical category with each of these guys, but I'm mentioning it because David, in terms of statistics, doesn't have a whole lot to go on. He's had his knee injury issues, and in terms of the way they feel like he's going to impact the Canadiens lineup in the future, that's the player they're drafting. This guy's 6'2", 185 pounds right now. He's 19 years old, just turned 19 years old in October, and I feel like long term he is going to have a big impact on the Canadiens' top 4 at the very, very least. I suspect that he has a ceiling of a top 2 pairing defenseman, but I would say top 4 is safer right now just because we have to see him develop more before we really have the confidence that he's going to be that top 2 pairing guy. But I believe that's what the Canadiens project for him as the biggest ceiling for him, is to be a top pairing defenseman for the Canadiens with Caden Gooley, for example. I could see a definite pairing of Caden Gooley and David Reinbacher in the future. Just in terms of David's size, his skill, his poise, I actually got the chance to actually see him play, which was pretty amazing in the rookie tournament in Buffalo. And what I liked about him is that he wasn't overreacting. He really was a sponge out there. He was making smart decisions. He was using his body. He had a lot to learn out there being a rookie, but he didn't look out of place. And he just looked like a guy who was doing what he needed to do to soak in everything he needed to eventually become a big impact player defensively with the Canadiens, defensively responsible, somebody who can have a bit of offensive upside too, which will grow in time, I believe, with him. So David Reinbacher, clearly going 5th overall with the Canadiens. They believe in this kid, and that's why they took him, much to our chagrin and our shock that we didn't take a forward in this draft, including me. But clearly they see the long-term impact that he's going to have, and that's why I've got him up as high as number 2. Number 1 shouldn't come as a huge surprise for those that have been following this guy's career, and that is Lane Hudson. 62nd overall selection, if you can believe it, in the 2022 NHL entry draft for the Canadiens. And this guy is going to come in and turn the Canadiens' power play on a dime. He's going to absolutely come in and be the Canadiens' long-term power play quarterback. His defensive game is where the biggest, not question marks, but the concerns are, I would say. I think most fans could agree to that based on what we've seen from Lane Hudson. However, based on the fact that the Canadiens just haven't had a solid power play quarterback since my favorite Hab of all time, Andrei Markov. My gosh, do we miss him? And Mike Matheson's doing his best, mind you, in waiting for Lane Hudson to get here. But Lane Hudson, we can look at his numbers, of course, which a lot of us do because he's always trending, it seems, in Hockey DB, right? But in 13 games played this season in Boston University, they don't play as many games every week as a lot of the major junior leagues and the pro leagues do. So in 13 games, Lane has 8 goals, 8 assists, 16 points in those 13 games, good for more than a point a game. So this guy is an impact player to such a degree that he scores overtime goals. It's just expected, it seems. Like right out of the get-go this season, we saw him do that with Boston University. That was the first game of the season. He got the overtime winner. 8 penalty minutes. He's a -4 currently, but this guy, his size is the biggest concern also for some folks. He's 5'9". Some believe he's actually listed at 5'10" to be exact. He's got a weight stature currently of 148 pounds. He's a smaller guy, right? So you can't hit, but you can't catch. So if he can use his mobility to avoid a lot of the physical play that's going to come his way in the future, also, he's going to add weight. He's going to add muscle. He needs to add about 10, 15 pounds of muscle. We heard Pierre McGuire say that also, I believe it was. Or maybe it was Craig Button, actually, because when asked whether Lane Hudson could be compared to a Quinn Hughes right now, Craig's opinion was that he's more like an Adam Fox. I think Pierre McGuire said the same. I'm going by opinions that I tend to respect, agree or disagree. But even if he becomes somewhere close to an impact player as Adam Fox with the New York Rangers, that's a pretty good ceiling to reach. We all thought Cale Makar, right? That's the ceiling where we think Lane Hudson could have. It's a possibility. I'm not going to go that far right now. I'm really not, because that's just not fair. It's way too early. He hasn't even signed with the Montreal Canadiens as of the recording of this video. I do expect him to sign this March. at the end of the Boston University season. And if you can believe it, Max Celebrini actually plays on the same team as Lane Hudson. So that's pretty exciting. That's going to make the World Juniors more interesting, with Lane Hudson hopefully having more of an impact on Team USA at the World Junior Tournament this year, and then playing against Max Celebrini on Team Canada. I'm just glad we have Celebrini after losing Bedard. But I mean, when it comes to Lane Hudson, this is a player that Eric Engels even went as far to say that he doesn't think Juraj Slafkovsky is going to be the best player in the 2022 NHL entry draft, because he believes that Lane Hudson could be that player. He could actually somehow be the best player in the 2022 NHL entry draft coming out of that draft class. And that's a pretty big projection. That's a pretty big thing to say. But based on what you've seen from Lane Hudson, the way he can impact the game, it's his offensive style that is highlighted more than anything else, right? He's an offensive defenseman. He's shifty beyond measure. He's crafty as heck. He's super fun to watch. He's an offensive dynamo, and hopefully he can maybe be as dynamic as, say, a Quinn Hughes or a Cale Makar someday. Adam Fox, like another defenseman to mention. But this is a guy that's going to be potentially turning the Canadiens' power play on a dime for years and years to come, especially how hard it is to watch right now. So it's between maybe Lane Hudson and David Reinbacher, or even Jacob Fowler. I think this number one spot could change, but I think when it comes to the next couple years, when Lane Hudson arrives with the Montreal Canadiens, which could be as soon as next season, it could be. I think it's certainly a good possibility it could be with Laval if the age restriction lines up, which Lane turns 20 in February. So that being said, Lane Hudson, power play quarterback of the future for the Montreal Canadiens, a player of the offensive defensive likes we have not seen, and that includes Andrei Markov and beyond. So the ceiling and the expectations are very high for Lane Hudson, and I can't wait to see the impact he's going to have long-term with the Canadiens. That's why I've got him at number one. Leave your comments down below, guys. This was a fun top 5 to do, and always love to hear your feedback, agree or disagree, but it's fun, and I appreciate the support. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you guys so much. Hit the like button, hit subscribe if you want to support. It makes an impact. Yes, you, everybody that does click those buttons, it makes an impact on this channel to support it. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys real soon. All my best. Go Habs, go, guys.